Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. I am John Keir, and that is Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is Season 6, Episode 18 of the podcast. August 24th, 2021, and Austin, today was notable for it being cut down day, the second roster cut down that we've had so far in the preseason. The Steelers trimmed their roster from 85 to 80 players. I figured it would be appropriate to start with that, and then we could talk a little bit about the Steelers and Lions Week 2 preseason game, the third preseason game for Pittsburgh, and we could talk a little bit about what we saw in that game, good and bad, and then we could get into storylines as we enter the final week of the NFL preseason.
Yeah, that all sounds good to me. So the 5 cuts, starting with that, were Pete Guerrero, the running back, Aviante Collins, the offensive tackle, Tyler Simmons, the wide receiver, Calvin Bundage, the linebacker, and most notably, I feel, was Antoine Brooks, the cornerback slash safety slash linebacker, whatever you wanted to call him. Lately, he was a cornerback. He had been having a really good training camp, so his release was surprising, especially when they waited for Cody White to get healthy, the wide receiver. So they must think very highly of Cody White or something, because they gave him the chance when he was injured. I don't really know what happened with Brooks. Do you have comments about Brooks? Sure.
Well, yeah, the surprise waiving of Antoine Brooks Jr., as I just said, was surprising. This was the guy that was taking first-team reps at slot cornerback early in training camp and then suffered a lower leg injury. And had actually come back to practice right before the game last week. Didn't play, though. So the fact that he got cut is surprising. And furthermore, what is also surprising is that if he clears waivers, which I imagine he would, he'll revert to injured reserve. And making injured reserve at this point in the season means you are ineligible to be activated from injured reserve. You have to make the initial 53-man roster. So for Brooks, it sounds like his season is over.
Yeah, that's a shame. He tweeted out, "Only the strongest survive where I'm at. Never know what you're going to get," and the 100 emoji. It's just unfortunate. He was obviously competing for a spot, and he looked like he was looking really good through training camp. So I guess there's next season if he remains for the Steelers, assuming he does. But it left the Steelers very short at cornerback.
Next year will be year 3
of
his NFL career. So an important year for sure. He's certainly not guaranteed a roster spot. It tells me that this injury was probably worse than he thought. They probably let him give it a go in practice for a couple days and tried to see if he could handle it, but evidently he couldn't. So, like you said, the defensive back room, we've been talking about the question marks there ever since the Steelers surprisingly released Steven Nelson early in the offseason. And it looks like they have their starters in place, their 2 safeties and their 3 cornerbacks, but behind those players, there's really a ton of question marks. And we had been talking about potentially adding a backup free safety. Malik Hooker and Carl Joseph had been in for visits earlier this offseason, but neither of them signed. So as we stand right now, the Steelers have what seems to be a clear hole at backup free safety. And now with the placing of Antoine Brooks on injured reserve, there's now a potential issue at slot cornerback behind what we are assuming is going to be starter Cam Sutton. So what is your read on this situation?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I mean, you got guys like Trey Norwood and you Miles Killebrews of the world, and then you have undrafted free agent Shocker Brown, and you have guys like Marcus Gilbert. These guys are like your backup guys. Like, the starters are fine. I feel comfortable with the starters. I feel like even though James Pierre is unproven, I feel like through training camp he's proved himself that he could be really good. And I felt like the end of last year when he got some more meaningful snaps, I thought he played really well. So I'm excited for the starters. I think that's fine, but it's just like you're put in a position where even if like a guy gets a concussion, like a week or two, like you're really handicapping yourself a lot. And not only that, you're handicapping your versatility. Like, what are you supposed to do for multiple wide receiver sets? Like more than three. Who's your fourth cornerback coming out? It's going to be really tough with that, or even just a fourth defensive back, because you really just need to add to the defensive back room for versatility. Because you're telling me that your fourth cornerback is going to be Shakur Brown, it's going to be Justin Lane. That's all right, I guess. Justin Lane was supposed to be decent, but I mean, I'm just not very high on him. Then Miles Killebrew and Trey Norwood don't excite anything in me. I know that they just today, Terrell Austin, the defensive backs coach, said that Trey Norwood is definitely in the mix to compete for the backup job, but like that doesn't inspire me a lot. It's just I feel like they need to add someone to help for just in case of injury, and for versatility matters. Like you can't. I don't like the idea of if you have to bring another defensive back on the field, it's going to be Justin Lane. Like that to me makes me sad.
The difference between what the Steelers were expecting to have had and what they now have is just one injury, and you've got a guy that you're really questioning whether or not a player like that is going to be a liability, whether it's Justin Lane or Shakur Brown or Arthur Millette. And I think Millette is one of those guys that actually he's got NFL experience, but he hasn't really impressed all that much. So, we've talked about other guys that the Steelers could bring in either for a visit or someone they could add late in this process, maybe a guy that gets cut, a roster cut down. Even if you do that, you're talking about an adjustment process with a guy that's not familiar with the team. At this point, if you add someone, you're talking about someone that's probably not going to be up to speed for at least a few weeks. It's concerning. It's definitely a big problem, and it again fortifies my thought that the Steelers made a bad decision in the releasing of Steven Nelson. And I understand that we're talking about two different cornerback positions, but the way I see cornerback is the way that a lot of people see the wide receiver position nowadays in the NFL, which is that you cannot have too many of them.
Yeah, and I mean with Cameron Sutton, you have the versatility that you could take either cornerback right now, and it helps you. If you get an inside one, you can move Cameron Sutton outside. If you have an outside one, you can move Cameron Sutton inside. It sounds like they're moving Cameron Sutton inside anyway, with James Pierre and Joe Hayden on the outside. So, I mean, it is what it is. And then going back to Arthur Millette, we don't even know if he'll be ready for week 1. Like we have that question mark there too, like because. We never got an update. Because when you said his name, I was like, why did I forget about him? And I was like, oh yeah, because he got injured in the last preseason game. And I don't know how bad it was, but he tweeted out that I'll be back stronger, # God's plan, So like, I who knows? Like that's really what it is. Like, we haven't gotten an update since, so maybe that means it wasn't anything that was a big deal, but. It might even keep him out of a week of practice, and that still sets him back. So, you know how it is.
Yeah, so at this point, there's, in terms of internal options, there's not a lot of comfort in what the Steelers have behind their starters. And I know we haven't gotten to see him play all that much. What do you think about James Pierre now entering his second season? The Steelers obviously have a lot of faith in him.
Yeah, I think James Pierre is like their next Mike Hilton. Different position because he's looking like he's projected to be the outside corner opposite Joe Hayden, but he's played really well, I feel like. And again, towards the end of the season last season, I thought that when he got meaningful snaps, he did really well with them. So I feel more confident in him, even though he's unproven. But I think we're in good hands with the starters.
I need to see more before I'm convinced, but I at least feel more comfortable than I had if I hadn't seen the last couple of preseason games that he's played. Okay, I can't pull up this guy's page. We had been talking a little bit about potential outside free agents, and one of them we were talking about was Pierre Desir, who was just released by the Seattle Seahawks as a potential replacement in the slot. Because one thing to keep in mind is that even though Cam Sutton can be a slot corner, a lot of teams will play 4 receiver sets now. So it's certainly plausible that the team is going to need 2 slot cornerbacks. And I know Arthur Millette could count as one, but I mean, do you really want Arthur Millette out there? I mean, I don't. I mean, I know he's played a bit, but I mean, that's not a recipe for success.
No, not at all. I really hope that they just get someone out from the outside, or at the final cut, there's someone that's at least a decent.
Oh, and then
to the
there's
team
the other hole that we
like
had been talking about, which is at backup free safety. As I mentioned, the Steelers had the likes of Carl Joseph and Malik Hooker in for visits, and neither signed.
Yeah, that's tough. You're left with Killebrew and Trey Norwood, literally. Like that's basically who your backups are. If they go for a 5th safety, which I can't see it, like I don't even know who they'd pick. Donovan Steiner? Like I don't.
Here are some names available on the free agent market. There's Trey Boston, Kenny Vaccaro, Andrew Sendejo, DJ Swearinger, Will Parks, and Tedrick Thompson. Those are the safeties listed on NFLTradeRumors.co's top 100 available free agents.
Yeah, Will Parks would be my favorite out of those, but still not amazing. I think it would be an upgrade to Norwood for sure. Will Parks played meaningful snaps in Denver as a not as a starting safety, just as a safety. So probably better than Killebrew too.
Was George Iloka
I think he'd be my favorite from that list.
Pro Football
I'm
Reference
sure
says he played
but
both.
I'm not completely positive on
He is a free agent. I mentioned Kenny Vaccaro, right? Here's another name. Jordan Dangerfield is available.
Yeah.
Kenny Vaccaro is a strong safety.
Jordan Dangerfield.
There's not a lot of names
Special
here, man.
teams, man. Yeah, I mean, we're really looking for that final cut down. I'm assuming it's next Tuesday. I think it was all Tuesdays. It was 1 week, 1 week, 1 week. I think that's how they did it this year with the 3 cut downs. So next cut down is getting from 80 to 53. So there will hopefully be maybe a surprising name there for safety. Maybe someone that's a little too expensive.
Well, either way, it's not good.
Either safety or corner.
That whole conversation spawning from the waiving of Antoine Brooks Jr. The other 4 cuts, none of them I think any big surprises. Pete Guerrero was a late add to the team, speedy, but was going to have his work cut out for him. That running back room was pretty large.
Yeah, no, I got 2. I predicted 2 on Twitter, 2 of the 5, and Guerrero was like basically a guarantee, and Avante Collins got surpassed by Chaz Green, like as soon as Chaz Green got there. So I knew he was coming off, but yeah, those
Simmons
2 were
I felt like was
guaranteed.
pretty
Guerrero basically
easy,
had no chance.
One to go after too. Isaiah McCoy being cut was simply because the Steelers had, I think they had 10 receivers, so they had 3 full teams of receivers and then an extra, so they continued to cut into that. And Calvin Bundage was definitely not long for the roster, seeing as how his name was never even put on the depth chart.
No, yeah, it just didn't make sense to keep him around. I think that they basically, the guys they want to look at linebacker, they already have. Like they have the guys that they're like the Ulysses Gilbert and Marcus Allen for the inside, and then you got like a whole battle going on at outside linebacker with Jameer Jones and Quincy Roche and Cassius Marsh. So linebacker room
you
was
want to get
pretty full
into
for
storylines
backups
as we
too.
get into the final preseason game, or do you want to talk about the preseason game? Okay.
We could go to the storylines.
I just feel like there isn't as much to talk
preseason
about with
game.
the preseason game, so I feel like it'll be easier to talk about at the end. So, yeah, as we go into the final week of the preseason, obviously there will be a drastic cut down from 80 players to 53, and then the, I believe, 16-man practice squad will be announced a few days later. So we're going to kind of go where we feel like there's something to talk about in terms of the roster squeeze. And to start, I'm talking about running back, and the question is, there's two questions, really. Number one, how many halfbacks are the Steelers going to keep on the roster? And depending on how many they keep, who is going to get squeezed out? I feel pretty comfortable in saying, based on the body of work, that Jalen Samuels is probably a safe cut. But the question beyond that is, do the Steelers keep 3 or 4? And if they keep 3, does that mean Benny Snell gets squeezed out too?
It would be tough. It's going to be tough because Benny Snell's been injured. It really stinks that he got injured, like, for him as a person and just, like, in general. Because at first I joked that when Darrell Henderson first went down, I said, trade Benny Snell to the Rams. And then it's really no one would trade for Benny Snell, so it was a joke. And then the Rams lost their next running back. And then they just got
Cam Akers.
I'm sorry, they didn't lose Darrell Henderson. They lost Cam Akers and then left. Yeah, my bad. I reversed the running backs. Then they lost Raymond Calais, who's having a good time, and now Darrell Henderson is banged up a little bit, but he should be good there. But so if Benny Snell was injured, it literally could have been a possibility to trade him to the Rams. But so it's just unfortunate that he's gotten like no practice since the beginning of preseason and training camp. Like, he got hurt so early, and who knows when he'll be ready. We saw them just waive Antoine Brooks injured, and he was playing well. So why not? Benny Snell's position is far from safe. He's not wide receiver. I'm sorry, he's not running back 1. He's not. He was fighting for running back 2 with Anthony McFarland, and granted, Anthony McFarland had a bad showing, kind of the last preseason game and stuff, and he hasn't been amazing in training camp. So it's been a competition, but really, it's been like Kalen Ballage has been the only one showing out in the running back room, and I don't think he's going to win running back 2. But I don't think Snell is guaranteed, but I feel like he is going to get a roster spot.
Yeah, well, it's tough. He's a guy that you really think could have benefited from playing. I think unless if he had a horrible game where he fumbled twice, I think just playing would have been enough for him. Mike Tomlin's a big fan of his, so the fact that he hasn't gotten any action kind of makes you wonder. Do you see a situation possible where we just talked about Brooks Jr. on injured reserve, and the fact that you have to make the initial 53-man roster to be eligible for IR to return? Do you think that he could make the initial 53 and then could get put on injured reserve?
That is a strong possibility, because now with the new IR rules brought in last year that they're continuing on into this year, he could return week 3 if he was ready, if they really wanted him that quick. So it's definitely a possibility to get him on the original 53 and then continue, then put him on IR and then take whoever was the last man that you took off. I'm pretty sure we saw that. It was before the new IR rules, but I'm pretty sure with Nat Burr we did that. Nat Burr got removed from the initial 53-man roster as to put someone on IR, and then Nat Burr just came back to the roster. Like, I remember being like, damn, we cut one of the only free agents we added that year. But yeah, so it wouldn't even be the first time the Steelers did that. If you were
Kevin Colbert, which one of these guys are you squeezing out, assuming you keep 3?
Personally, I don't think Samuels really fits in. Like, we know what Samuels is. He's not a young gun anymore. He doesn't need any more years to see what he's going to turn into. Samuels is what Samuels is, so I think he could go. But it's kind of tough because you know what's funny? I think he's been better than Snell, and I mean his availability is better than Snell's availability for sure. So, but Snell still is young and has chance to become something still. It's going to be tough as like a running back 2 or 3 behind Najee Harris, who's basically an every down back, and there's no reason for Snell to be on this team with Najee because Snell doesn't do anything better than Harris is going to do. So it's tough, and I think I would prefer Samuels actually.
So you're saying you would keep
I think Samuels
Snell
is the
over
one
Balaj
going
if it came to it? I was saying.
Oh,
if you
absolutely
kept 3,
not. I'm sorry.
4.
No, but Balaj.
So you're saying it's not even like a contest for you if it comes down to 3. You already know
no.
you're 3.
Oh, if it comes down to
Easy.
3, it's Harris, McFarland, and Balaj. Yeah, easy. It's not even a contest. Benny Snell is just he doesn't really do anything good, and I really that's pretty harsh, but it's just he feels like the next Jalen Samuels because that's exactly what Jalen Samuels is. He doesn't do anything really good.
Snell
Except for,
occasionally
he's
has
had
really
flashes.
odd,
I guess Snell's had flashes
plays.
too, but just out of nowhere. So I don't know. I just think that Balaj might be a better option going forward. I liked his receiving abilities. I think his receiving abilities are better than Snell's. And that's just enough for me. Like if you're a good receiving back at running back 3, you're
right,
good.
and wide receiver,
you could be
the
on
top
the roster.
4 guys are locked in. Ray McLeod has been number 5. Is there any chance someone else like a Matthew Sexton can push for receiver number 5, or is there even a chance that the Steelers keep 6? Because Sexton had another really good return on Saturday night, and even though he hasn't had a ton of plays at receiver, we know that last spot on the roster usually tends to be more about special teams. And with Ray McLeod being essentially on the roster because of his special teams ability, I could see a situation where maybe Sexton pushes McLeod for that spot. And, if the Steelers feel they have the flexibility to keep 6, I could also see that too.
Yeah, I think that Sexton definitely should have a chance, at least going into this last game to see what he could do, see if he could put up something. But unfortunately, we talked about this for the punter battle, or I did, is that the Steelers will elect for familiarity almost every time, and if it's close. And I think that really Sexton hasn't really done enough through the air on offense to say that McLeod should come off, because McLeod's been playing and he's been getting catches in the preseason, which doesn't really mean much, but Sexton hasn't. Like, Sexton hasn't really been there. And yeah, he has the punt returns and stuff in preseason, but McLeod has that in the regular season. And it's like you play special teams kind of against the backups. It's usually how it works. But like Sexton's playing against the backups to the backups, basically. So I think that they're going to elect for McLeod. And I personally also think McLeod should make it. I prefer McLeod over Sexton if it came down to that. Because I still think his special teams ability is likely better. It's like the best we've seen. Last year was like the best year we've seen our special teams, and I don't know how long with everything. And I wouldn't want to shake it up for wide receiver 5 personally. But I think if wide receiver 6 is an option this year, I think that Sexton could make that push because he has that special teams ability, and seems solid. I heard good things for training camp, but again, like nothing really through preseason so far for him. Yeah, that's likely not going to get you to the roster when you have another guy.
Now, and I know that
really fits into Matt Canada's offense.
There was a game flow situation where the Steelers were just trying to run out the clock last week, so they weren't exactly throwing the ball to end the game. But there were shorter lines last week too, and didn't receive a target. So real quick one to backtrack with Snell. How many touches, assuming he's healthy, do you want to see Benny Snell have next week?
As many as possible. Give him an audition for another team. Help him out. Like that's basically it. I mean, I want to, if anything, I feel like he should basically be the running back for most of the game. I guess it's probably going to be him, Tony Brooks James. I don't think McFarland plays, and I guess it's just the four and Balaj, like Samuels and Balaj. But I think if Schnell is healthy, he should be playing like 60% of that game. Try and audition as much as possible, get as many snaps as everyone else did.
Do you think they're just going to stick with 3?
Through the first. It's tough this year. I mean, defense has a lot of guys that you want to keep. If they can't trade anyone on defense, I would prefer to elect for 3. When you know that Najee Harris... If you drafted Najee Harris in the first round, saying that he's going to be a workhorse, you got to make him the workhorse, and you can't be worrying about wide receiver. I keep saying wide receiver. You can't be worrying about running back 4 when you have 2 other running backs and a fullback, assumingly, on the roster. So, I would personally elect for only 3 running backs this year. I just don't like the running back position, man. I feel like I've hammered that home. But I would elect for less running backs with Harris on the roster. Harris should be in every down running back.
Number 3 tight end is another spot to look at. Kevin Rader had a nice opening to camp, but kind of faded down the stretch. And Zach Gentry, though kind of quiet early in camp, has kind of rebounded to have a solid end of camp. Rader the better blocker, but Gentry the better receiver. Should be a pretty good battle going into the final week here. I don't know where I'm leaning right now.
Yeah, I mean, the potential with Gentry is just so huge with his height and size, but it depends on how much the Steelers have left in their hopes for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, how much they could wait to see if he turns into something. It's been a while. I mean, Kevin Rader is like a guaranteed good blocker. Like, you're getting yourself a solid blocker at tight end 3, and that's kind of what you want. You have 2 pretty solid receiving tight ends, not really blocking tight ends yet. Freiermuth might get there, but I think he still needs like another year. You do need that for tight ends. Ebron, we know what he is. He has the willingness to block, but he's just not very good at it. But he is a receiving threat. I think that personally it makes more sense to keep Raider as a team that is competing this year. I think that it would make more sense to take him over Gentry, because Gentry just isn't there yet. I feel like we're still waiting to see if he could turn into something great. And I mean, you just drafted Freiermuth, so now you're basically admitting that you're kind of done with the Zach Gentry project for now. It's on the back burner, so Gentry could stay on the practice squad. I think that Raider stays on the roster and Gentry comes to the practice squad, assuming no team sees a 6'8" tight end.
At the end of the day, I think it comes to
take him for a spin.
Who has better value in terms of what the offense is this year. You would think that with a more run-heavy approach, more movement, you'd think that it would lend itself more to a guy like Rader, but I don't know. Maybe, and here's something that probably won't happen, but we kind of jokingly talk about Eric Ebron being cut. What if they manage to trade Ebron for something, for like a slot cornerback? I know that leaves tight end number 2 wide open here, but I don't know. I still feel like there is something to be said for Gentry at this point, especially with the fact that they also invested a draft pick in him. I could see it going either way.
Yeah, it's tough to call. Gentry actually had even though he didn't get a catch last game, I thought he had a good block.
He's definitely a better blocker than he was 2 years ago. So he showed
some development at the very least. Yeah, he's shown improvement, and that has value.
No,
do you think there's a chance they keep 4 tight ends?
I think they're closer to 2 than 4. It's just hard to keep that many in the NFL these days, just because of the limited roster flexibility. And honestly, we've seen the Steelers so often use that extra lineman, and I think Joe Haig is supposed to be in that role this year as that extra tight end. I don't think they mind keeping two and having Derek Watt be the number 3 tight end in a pinch.
That would be pretty good because Watt has really good receiving ability, so that wouldn't be that bad. That makes sense. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that
you mentioned Gentry is a potential
practice
anyway. Squad guy that some other teams might value. Are you that worried about it that you try not to sneak him through waivers? You just keep him and keep Rader since you figure no one else will keep him or try to snag him.
It's definitely a game of cat and mouse here because I don't remember if we talked about this on another episode, but I have like deja vu. I'm pretty sure I said this about the two. I would be more worried about cutting Gentry and him being picked up than Rader, but I think Rader. I already said that I think Rader is better on the 53 man this year, and Gentry's better on the practice squad in emergency. So it's risk reward. I feel like if you cut Kevin Rader, no one's going to want him, while Gentry could have some suitors because of his size and intangibles. An
interesting thing to look at. I just mentioned Joe Haig. Him and Dan Moore seem to be in full competition for the swing tackle job. Dan Moore had been playing pretty well at left tackle. Finally started getting reps at right tackle, though, a position he hasn't played, I think, since early in his college career, maybe even longer. And this is a guy that showed well, but struggled with his right tackle snaps in practice, as you might expect. But he's doing a really good job out on the left side, Austin. I thought he played pretty well again on Saturday.
Yeah, I so wish we got it recorded. When I first watched this tape and was like, this dude's going to win the swing tackle job. Right after the draft, literally in April. Or early May, when I watched it. I think it was early May. When I watched this tape, I was like, this guy's going to win the swing tackle job over Joe Haig. He is so good. And here we are. Might not win the job because, I don't know, the Steelers might want to elect for a veteran, but I think he's better than Joe Haig, in my personal opinion. I think that he's played really well through preseason, and I think that he's definitely... I think he should win the swing tackle job. There's more. How I was just talking about, it's a game of cat and mouse with the tight ends. This is a very deep thing here because you almost want Joe Haig to not play. Not just because he sucks or because he's bad. I don't want to say he's bad. He hasn't gotten a snap with the Steelers, but he was bad with the Buccaneers. But you can't cut a player outright to gain a compensatory pick back. However, because they changed the rules. However, the rules have not changed for snap percentage. So snap percentage is something that's considered when picking comp picks. So Haig is literally the bottom qualifying for comp picks. He's like the last contract. If he doesn't play at all this year, if Dan Moore takes all the swing tackle snaps, the Steelers are likely to get themselves back a sixth that Haig is canceling out from Mike Hilton. So there is a lot to root for with Dan Moore. Not that just he's a young player that looks good, but it also helps the Steelers with future picks because they don't have, at the moment, a 5th, 6th, or 7th round without comp picks considered. I'm sorry, they don't have a 4th, 5th, or 6th without comp picks considered just at the moment. So them getting a 6th back would be nice if Moore could just play from the get-go.
It's important to note that Haig and Moore switched sides this past week. So Moore played right tackle, and according to his PFF grade, he had his worst grade of the preseason at a 61, but in 47 snaps did not allow a single pressure. Joe Haig allowed 2 pressures in 16 snaps on the left side in the game against the Lions.
Yeah, it's tough. He's outplaying him, and I mean, I just think of that play last week when he got spun around, Haig. It's just tough. Like, I can't believe that was such a bad contract. Just going back at that, like, why Why did Hay get anything more than the veteran minimum? Why is this even a qualifying comp pick contract anyway? This was one of the worst contracts
I told you
I've seen.
at the
It's
time
so stupid.
too. Like, this guy is not good.
Something so small. Yeah, that was tough. It's tough to like for a vet minimum. How could I complain?
Collins,
Like
Avante Collins,
Aviante. Why can't I just remember his name? Yeah, like he just like he was a veteran minimum guy. Like I'm not mad that he got cut. Like was Joe Haig really that required that we needed to give him more than $2 million per year? And on a 2-year contract, I don't get it. That was a really bad contract.
Yeah, I just remember he was the guy
head.
that when everything was going wrong in Tampa Bay earlier in the year, he was the guy that everyone was like, this guy is causing so many problems along the offensive line because he's not good. And that's no offense to him on a personal level. But again, I don't know why you give out that contract. And it seems like the Steelers are almost rushing Dan Moore, trying to get him snaps on the right side, hoping he catches on quickly so that they might be able to get this comp pick back. So I don't know. I'd rather have both guys than just one. But if you have Hay, he's going to end up playing at some point. I mean, let's be honest. So is that 6th round pick worth a lot to you, considering all the picks the Steelers have given up already? Maybe. And, I understand if that's how the team may feel. But there's certainly problems here, and you also have to hope that Dan Moore doesn't get stunted in his growth because the Steelers are rushing him to try to get him on the other side where he's not used to playing, because you have to be able to play both tackle positions if you're going to be the swing tackle guy.
%100. Yep. I think that keeping both makes sense. I just feel like treating it like a Brandon Boykin situation, where Boykin was like given the bare minimum amount of snaps, and then yeah, literally. So that's what I'd prefer with Haig. Like, he's a just in case option that's still there. That if there's like God forbid, knock on wood somewhere, that there's like 2 injuries on the offensive line that cause him to have to play, that you still have him. But if the Steelers stay healthy, I just want to see Dan Moore.
As far as the interior goes, I don't have a ton to say, mostly because we don't know exactly how many they're keeping, but we know the 3 guys they're keeping, and then it's a question of the starters and Turner, Green, and Kevin Dotson. Then the question would be, do they keep 2 interior linemen or do they keep 3? And if they keep 2, who gets squeezed out? There's Hassenauer, Finney, and Rashad Coward. Of those 3, who do you think is the most locked in? Because I think it's Hassenauer right now.
I think it's Hassenauer too. I think they really liked him. I mean, he's still listed as the starting center on their website, which I don't think that's going to last for much longer. But I do actually think that they liked him and that he had a strong camp. They obviously do not care about an undersized center. They went and grabbed a undersized center in the 3rd round. So they're not worried about that with Hassenauer. I think that he might not provide the versatility that Finney does, but I think that Finney is like at the end of his career. Like his best days were when he was backing up Ramon Foster, and I really thought he was really good and that he could start. But as soon as he went to the Bengals, or the Seahawks, then the Bengals.
I think they view him more as a guard now.
It just all went downhill
like
from there.
Hassenauer is the center, and they see Finney as the guard.
Yeah, that could be possible.
Well, that's
too.
what I was going to say.
I think
Coward
like
is
Coward
an interesting player
Finney,
because I feel like they don't want to cut him. Yeah, let's get to that real quickly.
Derwin Gray is on the market.
Former 7th round draft pick Derwin Gray, who was yearly. There's one Steelers player that gets lost on waivers. The Tuzar Skippers, the Deontay Spencers, the Derwin Grays, the Fred Johnsons.
Deontay Spencer.
And here's Derwin Gray back on the market. I'd definitely be giving him a call. I'd bring him in and cut. I don't know, anyone. not anyone, but John. No offense to John LeGlue, but I'd say see you later, alligator.
Yeah, I mean, maybe LeGlue could come back to the practice squad, or the 16-man when that happens. But, yeah, I would like to give Derwin Gray another spin, because that one hurt. I mean, like, it wasn't even like he got claimed by, like, the 20th team. He got claimed by literally the first team that had priority on him, and we never found out if anyone else put in a claim for him. But obviously he's back on the market, so the Jaguars didn't like what they saw in him.
That's a team that is run by...
But they also didn't
I'm
like what they saw in Joe Schobert, so...
It's just hell about that coaching staff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a brand new coaching staff. That Derwin Gray was not one of their players, and so I would love to give Derwin Gray another shot with Pittsburgh.
Well, and
I didn't like
as I
him
recall,
leaving
it was
in the
like
first
an
place. That
avoidable
really made me sad.
situation with that whole roster spot, as I remember.
I think you're right. I can't remember why, but it's really funny. I remember where I was, but I can't remember why I was so mad about it. There was definitely another option that someone should have been cut first.
Look that up because I'm kind of curious. You were at a Wegmans, wow.
I was at a Wegmans, by the way. I was in a Wegmans. I was in a Wegmans parking lot in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I remember walking out of the supermarket and being so frustrated because like, why did they cut him? Like they could have cut someone else and they would have lasted until.
An article from Steelers Now.
I don't remember.
Oh, you know what it was? The Steelers promoted T. Gray Scales and Matthew Wright. That was when Chris Boswell was in protocol. Or was injured. One of those two.
It was to bring up to Gray Scales.
That's why it was so frustrating, because you knew it was a
that guy is
temporary
slow
thing.
as hell.
And it was like, if you cut this guy now, he's going to get claimed. And sure enough, that's what happened.
And to Gray Scales got
It has
cut like
often
last
been
week
said that
officially
guys like
for
that
maybe
get
the
cut
last
so many
time. We'll
times.
see.
It's a wonder they didn't bleed to death. On the other side, it sounds like again, the defensive line is deep. Outside of the starting three, there's a potential battle between Isaiah Buggs and Carlos Davis. What about Henry Mondeau, the kickoff specialist, and Isaiah Loudermilk? And what about Chris Wormley, who we thought may be safe, but he could potentially be cut too? Even if the Steelers keep 7 defensive linemen here, there's going to be a potentially rosterable player that gets lost here. So, I mean, how do you see this one shaking out? This is a deep group.
Yeah, this sucks because they're so deep and there's so many guys to like. Mondeau has been like a favorite for like his contribution on special teams, like Kiesel. Isaiah Buggs was originally considered a guy that was kind of like maybe an odd man looking out, but he's had a really good preseason so far with pressure and stuff. Carlos Davis, another guy that was it kind of felt like Davis versus Buggs because they were fighting each other at the end of last season for God knows what. But he's done solid. But I feel like Davis is going to be one of the ones cut. See, it's so tough. It's so tough to project how it's going to shape up. I don't know if anyone's going to want him, but I would ideally like to trade one.
The thing
You
is,
probably
they
value
both,
them more than anyone else.
The
but
Buggs and Davis are both guys
it's just
that
there's so many
the coaches
you want
like.
to keep. Yeah. It's tough. You got the starters in Tuitt, Alu, and Hayward. From there, it just gets so difficult. It's why the running... You got to keep running backs at 3, because keeping running backs at 3 gives you potential to keep 7 defensive linemen. It's not likely to happen, but it gives you the opportunity to do so if you want to. And there's a lot of guys worth keeping on the defensive line. With Mondeau having special teams ability, it kind of might give you that flexibility. And having the versatility to change out the D-line like that is something that you lack in defensive back room and linebackers are pretty flexible too. But being able to be versatile with your defensive line kind of helps with lack of versatility with the defensive backs, if that makes sense. It gives you more defensive
outside linebacker, there's a
versatility
similar
overall.
squeeze with the potential fourth or fifth coming down to a group of three and Cassius Marsh, Quincy Roche, and Jameer Jones. I think all three of those guys have played well, and I would imagine that the Steelers are going to try to keep 5 of those guys, so I think realistically it's who gets cut and gets put on the practice squad.
Yeah, I think it's going to end up being Roche. I think that I think that the rookie is going to end up there because he's newer to the team. Oh no, actually,
Quincy
Jones
Roche
is the newest. Or was he there before the draft?
Was a draft pick this year in the 6th round, and I want to say Roche was a guy that came out last year as an undrafted free agent and had to sit the whole year. Signed from Notre Dame.
Jameer Jones. Second year, and we signed second year professional outside linebacker in 2021. Second
Jones.
year, so. Damn. That's a shame. But regardless, Jameer Jones is just the new Tazar skipper. I've now given up caring about the edge rusher that just absolutely goes off in the preseason that the Steelers couldn't give a single couldn't give anything about. It's just Jameer Jones played probably the best out of the 3 in terms of stat production. He's likely to be the one that's cut, though. It's just how it's going to be. Tazar Skipper literally played his ass off that preseason and got cut. I mean, apparently no team wants to keep him. I think he's with the Falcons right now, but I'm done caring about.
Well, at the end of the day, it matters.
That breaks out
as we learned, it matters all about special teams.
I think that he. Yeah, and I can't say Jameer Jones had anything memorable. I'm probably forgetting something on special teams, but I don't know if any of the others had anything in the preseason either. I can't think of anything.
I just can't believe that Jameer Jones is Jerron Jones' younger brother, and I never even knew that.
It's tough.
I wonder if I played against this kid when we were in middle school.
Like the James Pierre stuff.
Going back. I didn't technically play against him. Our
because you played against Jerron.
I didn't play against him. Good God, that would have been bad. Because I was just a sophomore, and I obviously wasn't on the first team at that point. But I digress. So wow, that's kind of cool. So on a personal note, I'm definitely rooting for Jameer Jones now. But what was I gonna say? It all comes down to special teams, which you would think would give the edge to Marsh right now. But if either of those guys can stick out on special teams, they'll have a chance.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has the edge on special teams.
You make that pun on purpose?
Not sure.
Who has the edge?
No, because I don't even know what pun I made. Oh, the edge. I didn't even realize.
Well,
I didn't do it on purpose, but can we pretend like I did?
Robert Spillane and Ulysses Gilbert III have not had probably the least happy about the fact that Joe Schobert was added to the room. Spillane losing his starting job, and I think Gilbert III probably being the odd man out at the linebacker position. A highly promising guy after his rookie season, struggled with back injuries last season and has really struggled this preseason with missing tackles and being out of position. I think he could be the end of the line for him.
Yeah, I really thought Marcus Allen was going to be the odd guy out this year, but it looks like UG3 kind of pushed himself out. Like you said, it just hasn't had a good year. I mean, anything could surprise me. UG3, they really loved him before his injuries, and maybe they'll hold on to that love. But I mean, I think Marcus Allen is going to make
last
it
position
over him
battle to talk about is Presley Harvin versus Jordan Berry for the final time.
Hey! You're disrespecting the other
Christian. Yeah,
position battle.
You want to touch on that real quick?
Long snapper battle. I feel like I was the first person on that. I got to look back at our episodes. I'm fairly confident we had an episode where I said Canada was the second highest paid long snapper. There is a high chance that if the Steelers were willing to sacrifice, I think it was Barry's money. I think it was literally about Harvin, because when I was like, they paid Barry for no reason, I'm sure that they would just cut a long snapper if he's overpaid. And Canada is the second highest paid long snapper, and he's not perfect. Like, if you're the second highest paid long snapper, you better be perfect. And I think Kuntz is going to win this job. I really do. I think that Canada's job is far from untouchable, and with him being paid as the second highest paid long snapper in the league, I'm pretty sure I felt like Kuntz was going to have a good shot at this. I think he's still going to win it. I think that the fact that he's not cut right now, that he's not searching for an NFL team, tells me that he's going to win this job.
Interesting.
Because what other?
No.
Do you need?
No,
he's
not
not playing tight end. What do because he was a tight end long snapper when he first arrived with the Steelers and been cut like 5 times, but then they're just like, nope, you're just a long snapper. We'll admit to that. And so, like, what other reason would you keep 2 long snappers? You got rid of your other kicker. When you have a really good kicker that risks getting hurt, you're gonna say that it's because you don't want to hurt your long snapper? I don't think so. I highly doubt that when you cut Sam Sloman and let Chris Boswell play.
Little note I wanted to add: the felony charges brought
Kuntz
against Teron Jones have since been dropped, for whatever that's worth. Doubt it.
Maybe he'll make a return on the practice squad this year.
Yeah, and then the last one, Harvin and Barry. I'd throw Barry out there, and I'd slip something in his drink that makes him boot it a little bit further this time, if possible, and see if you can get a 7th for him.
That would be great. That would be so great if we were able to trade Jordan Berry. And we saw Brad Wing get traded, so it's not out of the realm of possibilities, but this battle's really coming down to the wire. This last game was supposed to be a punting battle, and then because hashtag Ben Roethlisberger is washed. I couldn't think of the word. The only time they punted was the first drive, and that's sarcasm. I feel like I have to point that out before I get yelled at. It's sarcasm, but yeah, no, they did. That was the only time they punted. It was only Harvin when it was supposed to be a battle. Barry didn't even get a chance to punt in that game. But yeah, it's coming down to the wire. I hope that next game, they get more opportunities to go head to head. Barry gets a chance to show off to another team that, ooh, shiny, I'm worth a 7th, and we go with Harvin. The battle is really interesting. Alex Kozora charted all the snap times and stuff. He wasn't able to do like drop to foot time, because that's like impossible when he's not down there, but he did like the hang times and stuff. He did the top 5 hang times, the bottom 5 hang times, the top 5 yards, the bottom 5 yards, the average yards for both. And it's like they both have their strengths and weaknesses. Harvin is going to be the most inconsistent player, where he has like the top 2 hang times and like all the longest punts, the top 5 of them. But he also has, I think, all but one of the bottom 5 punts from training camp. But like, he's just got that potential to have a rocket of a punt that Barry doesn't, and the hang time is so good with him. It's like, you can't really come down to the wire more than this. Like, they both have their arguments
the Minnesota Vikings
for why they
once
should
traded
stay.
a 5th-round pick to get Kari Vedvik from the Ravens, who then lost the kicking battle with Dan Bailey.
That was tough. That was recent. That
He
was
went like
that
I
was
think he
really
went like
bad.
7 to
Benedict
7
was
in the
really
preseason,
good.
and then lost
And
to Dan Bailey. And let's see, he's played in 1 career game. That you want to talk about throwing away a pick? That is throwing away a pick. You have to think they can get something for him.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that they get something for Barry. I hope they get like a conditional 7th. Like, hey, if he's on the roster halfway through the season, you get a 7th.
Since we're running, maybe not
That'd be nice.
super long, but since we're about at an hour here, do you want to not talk about the Lions preseason game? We could talk about that next episode and kind of combine that with our preview, since there isn't a ton to talk about with the fourth and final preseason game, and we could just kind of clean up with some NFL headlines here. All right. First thing to mention is the Jets. The Jets continue to have a tough season, even without having played any games yet. They lost Carl Lawson for the season with a torn ACL.
Yeah, that's tough. I think Carl Lawson's one of the more underrated players in the NFL. I really liked him as a Bengal. Like, he was really good. And the Jets said, well, he's not underrated to us, and gave him a fat contract that I felt like he was worth. It just sucks. He has had an injury problem for most of his career. He started his career this way, and now tore his ACL again. I feel for him. It sucks. It was a big signing. The Jets are actively looking to trade someone, though. They're trying to look for a pass rusher to fill that void. So watch out for them. If the Steelers can't keep all of their defensive linemen, there could be a chance the Jets come calling. But I think they're looking for something bigger. I think that they're in the market for like Chandler.
They
Jones,
also lost Vinny Curry for the entire
wanted
year.
Out of
he didn't
Arizona.
even play. Well, and Gerard Davis had an ankle injury. He's out for a couple months. And just today, Mekhi Becton left with a possible concussion.
Yeah, then that backup safety that wasn't likely to make the roster, he tore his patella. I think his name was Zane something. Then their rookie Elijah Moore had a scare, and he was out of practice for like a few days.
More tough injury luck. James Robinson fans are going to be excited because it seems as though Travis Etienne, the rookie running back from Clemson of the Jacksonville Jaguars, suffered a Liz Frank tear and is most likely done for the year. Yeah, so that's it.
Oh, he's done. They put him on IR. Yeah, but since it's before the season, he can't come back. So his season is over before it began.
Anytime you see Liz Frank, assume minimum, the worst.
That would have. Yeah, it's a bad injury to have. It's a long recovery time. It's just bad. It's only a sprain.
That
from
injury essentially ended Santonio Holmes' career.
But
we have some COVID silliness to talk about. The Buffalo Bills have, I want to say, 4 players in quarantine after being considered close contacts, including Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis, Vernon Butler, and Star Lutulele. Matt Milano and A.J. Klein were also sent home out of precaution. So there's that. Buccaneers kicker Ryan Suckup tested positive for COVID-19 after dinner and is out for the upcoming preseason game. And due to some sort of misunderstanding about testing, Cam Newton is going to be sidelined for a period of time, which Bill Belichick is clearly not happy about, saying, quote, oh, lost the quote. When asked about if it was a big opportunity for Jones, Belichick said it is, meaning that this could give Mac Jones the opportunity to take the starting job with Cam Newton out. Any thoughts on all this?
Cam Newton trash. No, but seriously, it's a good opportunity for Mac Jones to solidify that, hey, he can be just as good as Cam Newton. They've had a pretty good battle through the preseason. I think that Newton wins it because it's been pretty even, so to say. But I mean, if COVID, with if Newton remains unvaccinated, like he's opening up the option for Jones to start at any point this year and keep it. And I mean that could happen regardless of if he gets COVID or not. Because I truthfully, yeah, I mean he could have just pissed Belichick off and been like, well, guess what? You're not the starter anymore. You should have been vaccinated. Sorry, bud.
I think Belichick just wants his guys there.
But obviously availability is availability is the best ability, and that's how it goes. So Mac Jones might have been able to get himself a starting spot without having to do anything. Who knows? We'll have to see what the Patriots do. I think they're going to open up with Cam Newton still, unless he contracts COVID in the next
last thing I wanted to throw out there,
before the season starts.
NFL, the Pro Football Hall of Fame announced their 2022 senior finalists. There's only two, so one of these two men will be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame next year, and that is former Raiders wide receiver Cliff Branch and former head coach Dick Vermeil, both former Super Bowl champions. Branch was a consistent deep threat over his 14-year career, a 3-time All-Pro, and Branch, who passed away in 2019, would be obviously a nice moment for the Raiders fans. And for Dick Vermeil, he was the head coach for multiple great teams, including the 1999 Greatest Show on Turf Rams. Had a 15-year hiatus between coaching, oddly enough, after his coaching days with the Eagles. So an interesting career for him, too. Any thoughts on either of those guys? I mean, I don't know if you're super familiar with either of them.
Cliff Branch, I feel like, has been waiting for a while. I feel like I see whenever there's a Hall of Fame.
Oh, well, he's kind of like the Drew Pearson for the Raiders. They played around the same time. In fact, I think Branch was older, if I'm not mistaken. Branch played from 1972 to 1985.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah, my goodness. You want to hear
him and
Pearson.
Stat? I might have been confusing him with Pearson, honestly.
So understand that he played in a much less pass-friendly time. He did have one 1,000-yard season. I want you to guess how many receptions he had that season. You would be correct.
I'm going to guess not a lot. I'll say... I'm going to say something ridiculous.
46.
71.
He averaged 24.2 yards per grab. That dude averaged an explosive play every time he caught the ball.
That is nutty.
Even in an era where a lot of those catches were deep down the field, that's unreal. Like, I want to say, like, usually the league leader in yards per catch, like a decade ago, were like around 17, 18 yards. Branch averaged 17.3 over his career. Yeah. So he only finished with 500 catches, but had, nearly 10,000 receiving yards to show for it and 67 touchdowns. So I could understand it. And Dick Vermeil, definitely another interesting candidate too. Last thing I wanted to say, sounds like the TJ Watt extension is going to be happening right after the preseason game ends. Sounds like they pretty much have it ready, but they're going to sign on the dotted line after the preseason game.
Yeah, I was never really worried, so it's good that it's happening, but it's nothing other than what I expected. I knew it was going to happen, that they're going to just throw him like $30 million. And I'm pretty sure it's because of like a loophole that they're doing it here. There's like a provision in the new rule book that says, what does it say? It says any roster bonus in the season of signing when a contract is signed after the last preseason game are treated as a signing bonus. So the Steelers are trying to get it treated as a signing bonus, a roster bonus, is what it sounds like. Because from when they signed a new contract. That's probably why they waited. It was probably nothing about negotiation. They probably had a deal ready. They probably were just waiting for that one little clause so that they could have it with a different tag, so it didn't count against it counted against salary in a different way.
All right.
I should say.
Yeah, I mean, thank God. I'm so tired of hearing about the controversy of whether or not it's going to get done. I mean, what a bunch of nonsense. Just...
Yeah, stupid. I mean, Steelers have always been good about paying their own. You know what's even stupider, to go on a tangent? I saw people complaining that they're paying TJ Watt and making him the highest paid defensive player. I pose the question: if you are someone that doesn't want to pay TJ Watt to make him the highest paid player, who would you want to pay?
Exactly. And
are you waiting for Aaron Donald to hit the market?
Fans in Pittsburgh, especially, complain about this because there's a baseball team where all people do is constantly complain about the owner not spending more money, funneling money into the team. So what do you want? Do you want them to spend money or do you want them to not spend money? Because I thought we were upset that people weren't spending money, and now that they're talking about it, now you're pissed off about it.
Literally, you're getting the second best defensive player over the last 2 years, and arguably should have been the best defensive player by voted that way last year. I still hold not this past season, 2 years ago. I guess.
Agree. Yeah,
I hold that Gilmore should have won that defensive player of the year, and I'm still mad about it. Donald, deserving. Donald, I can't disagree with that. I think TJ Watt would have still been a good option, and TJ Watt wouldn't have been mad. I obviously wouldn't have been mad about it, but I think he would have been worthy of it, and people would have been mad that Donald didn't win it. I think those people would have been fair too, because Donald had a really good season. But Gilmore, I watched Gilmore get burnt by Josh Brown. And I'm not even sure Josh Brown is currently on the roster.
Oakland. Oh my God, Las Vegas.
I don't understand.
He's a handcuff to Henry Ruggs.
Las Vegas. Okay, so he's at least on. Yeah. So I'm still mad about that, but yeah. So you're getting the second best defensive player, and you're paying him that way. You're not going to get Aaron Donald in whenever his contract is over. You got to get over it. You're not going to find a better defensive player than this. And TJ Watt is very worthy of this extension. Next year, when the next defensive players need to get paid, like Shaq Barrett and stuff, it is going to look like a great contract, especially when the salary cap goes up. At least, hopefully, the salary cap goes up next year. But I don't understand the not wanting to pay TJ Watt when he is literally the second best defensive player in the league.
To try to say no, don't do this. I hear people talk about JJ Watt. Okay, JJ Watt played a different position, and people will say genetics means something. Okay, maybe, but there's a lot of instances where brothers are completely different. What about DK Metcalf and his father? I want to say Eric, who's a lineman. I mean, they're built completely differently. So, what are we doing here? I mean, Christian McCaffrey's an NFL superstar. Have you heard of his brothers? What about Rob Gronkowski? Have you heard of his two other brothers, Dan and Chris? Oh yeah, he's the youngest. Yeah. He's the youngest.
I've heard of Glenn.
Chris and Dan are older than Rob, fullback. And their time in the league went and gone, done. So,
yeah, Anthony McFarland. I think is Anthony McFarland related to the offensive lineman, the Buccaneers? Know. Anthony McFarland. I think he is, right? I think we've been over that. Pretty sure.
Well, Anthony McFarland is
the
Anthony
Buccaneers
McFarland
had
Jr.
Anthony McFarland back in the early 2000s. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure they're
when you say
related,
when you say Anthony McFarland,
and they're
are you
nothing
talking about
alike
Booger?
If that's true, because Anthony McFarland.
Booger McFarland. Because that's the Anthony McFarland who was on the Buccaneers.
I don't know, because
no, they're not related. They are not related.
Oh, maybe. Oh, okay. That just happened. Okay, my bad. Okay, so the reason I've been making all-time teams for every team.
Yo, I'd like to point out Brian Syke was the MVP in the 1980 season. Just saying. That was no one's gonna know what we're talking about, but we had a discussion about it. But
trash.
I'm just saying.
Trash. You're trash. But yeah, okay. I thought that they were related because I was looking at the Buccaneers team and I was like, oh, Anthony McFarland Jr. That makes sense. But I guess it just happened to be. But regardless, going back to the point.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you ignore them.
Don't
I mean,
matter
we know the Steelers love their
time.
genetics, but I mean, just because, and we've learned that just because a player gets injured a lot, it doesn't mean they're injury prone. It is possible to have a bunch of freak accidents or injuries on top of each other. It happens. There's a difference between, in my opinion, J.J. Watt and James Conner. So, and then on top of that, I hear,
sure.
$28, $30 million is quarterback money. Well, for some, but have you seen the new contracts that have been given out the last 2 to 3 years? Nowadays, those contracts are $45 million in average annual value. $30 million is a significant decrease from that. So it's just not the same. And I hear, well, you could just franchise him twice, and you could let him play out this year, franchise him twice, and then do the Le'Veon Bell thing. But first of all, do we remember what a pain in the ass that was a couple years ago? Number one, number two, even if he does come in and play that, why would you want to piss the guy off like that? What if he's great? Let's not forget he might decline, but I don't think he will. James Harrison was a Defensive Player of the Year at age 30. Players will have good seasons past the age of 30. Cam Hayward broke out, I think, at age 29. That was his first truly great season. Are we really that concerned with that? And then on top of that, the franchise tag value people are using, I've seen it said less than $50 million for the next 3 years. That's just not correct. The franchise tag value is not known because it's based on previous year's average from the top 10 positions, top 10 paid players at that position. So it's not a value you can't possibly know what it is. So that's not right. That's not right. It's incorrect, and a lot of people are biting on that, and it's wrong. And then I hear another argument, oh, well, then you'll have to pay Minkah Fitzpatrick next year. Okay. And?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you're exactly correct.
Jamal
that's what
Adams
we hope
just
the
got
Steelers
paid.
do.
He got overpaid. Whatever. That's another conversation if you want to have it. But his value is at $17.5 million. Is it the end of the world if Minkah Fitzpatrick makes $20 million a year average annual value? I mean, that might be a little high, but that's right around where it's going to be. Why is that so bad? I mean, you're apparently looks like you're not going to be paying a quarterback next year. Isn't the idea to be doing stuff like this? People just want to be mad, and I've had enough of it. I'm ready for the season to start, but thank God this contract is getting done.
Yeah, I'm ready for the season to start. Yeah, we can move on past that, and then we could be mad that Minkah Fitzpatrick wants $20 million a year. Are you kidding me? That'll be the next one. Man's only had 9 interceptions.
He'll have 4 interceptions instead of 5 this year.
2
then
years
it'll be
with the Steelers.
I don't know if we want to pay that guy. Yeah. Former two-time.
He
regressed. Could be an all-pro this year, obviously. But even if he's not, even if he just makes the Pro Bowl, it's he wasn't as good. And it's well, I don't know what to tell you people, but I think we've made our point. All right. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap things up here. Anything else you wanted to mention? All right. Well, I wanted to let everyone know that's listening that we have some exciting news. We have moved our podcast officially to Anchor. Anchor is an awesome website by Spotify that creates dashboards for these websites. So you can find it a little more easily. We have our own page on there, and it distributes our podcast on a bunch of different things, including Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and also on Spotify. And of course, as always, we'll also post it on YouTube. So there's plenty of places to see our podcast now. And if you want to see that, visit the website anchor.fm/stronger-than-steel. That is how you find our new hub for our website and our old blog website. We haven't really had any activity on it in a while. I have some new plans in the work for it. But in the meantime, please feel free to visit our Anchor website. That'll be listed in the description below. And feel free to check it out. We're excited about it. So feel free to find it on any of those platforms. Give it a like. And if you want to give us feedback, please email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, Austin and I will be talking about the Steelers' Week 2 preseason game against the Detroit Lions, and we'll also preview the annual finale against the Carolina Panthers. Until next time, Austin, thank you for joining me, and ladies and gentlemen listening, thank you for joining us today on the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a good night.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.